The hospital at night settles into a false calm. Fluorescent lights hum softly over empty chairs and polished floors. The emergency department breathes in cycles. Monitors beep, doors hiss open and closed, shoes squeak and vanish down corridors. It is controlled, but only on the surface. Everyone working knows how thin the line is. One bad hour can undo the entire night. The new nurse moves through it without drawing attention. Her scrubs are clean, unwrinkled, the badge still stiff against her chest. She walks with economy, never rushing, never stopping without purpose. At the nurse's station, 2 senior staff speak over her head as if she is furniture. When she reaches for a chart, one of them pulls it back and corrects her on a protocol she already followed. She says nothing. She nods once and steps away. In room 12, an elderly man sleeps with his mouth open, oxygen hissing steadily. She adjusts the tubing by a centimeter, checks the IV line, and scans the monitor longer than necessary. Not because she is unsure, because she is listening. The cadence of the alarms matters to her. A rhythm out of place is easier to catch when you let the room speak first. Down the hall, security radios crackle. The volume is low, but she hears it anyway. A call about the parking structure. Another about a delayed ambulance reroute. No details given, just clipped acknowledgments and silence afterward. She files it away without changing her expression. At the trauma bay, a junior resident fumbles with gloves, clearly exhausted. The nurse steps in, wordless, handing him the right size before he asks. He does not look at her face. He mutters thanks out of habit, not awareness. She watches his hands, notes the tremor, and positions herself so she can steady an instrument if needed. The patient stabilizes. Credit floats upward, as it always does. She returns to the station. Laughter breaks out when she passes. Someone jokes about the quiet one being too calm for nights like these. Another voice says she will learn. They assume she is new to pressure because she does not perform it. She logs vitals, neat and precise, no wasted motion. When the system lags, she waits instead of slapping the keyboard. Waiting reveals patterns. Patterns reveal intent. A paramedic wheels in a patient from a minor collision. As they transfer care, the paramedic leans in and lowers his voice. "We were told to stand by," he says, eyes darting toward the ambulance bay doors, then told to divert. No reason given. The nurse nods once. "Thank you," she says, and means it. She walks toward the windows overlooking the emergency entrance. Rain streaks the glass. Reflections distort the outside world, but she can still see headlights idling longer than usual. Engines running, not revving, holding. She checks her watch. The timing is wrong. Behind her, a supervisor raises his voice at security over a missing clearance form. The argument is procedural, loud, and pointless. She listens without turning around. The supervisor is focused on authority. Security is focused on liability. Neither is focused on momentum. She moves back into the flow of work, adjusting beds, checking medication carts, asking neutral questions that sound like learning but are actually confirmation. When she asks if the backup generator was tested this week, the charge nurse waves her off. "It was," she says. "Relax." The nurse does not relax. She counts exits instead. Notes which doors are magnet-locked, which swing freely, which cameras are dark because maintenance postponed a replacement. She memorizes it quietly, as if she might need to move someone fast without being seen. In pediatrics, a child cries until the nurse kneels and lowers her voice, not to soothe, but to listen. The child points at the ceiling and says the lights are flickering. They are. Barely. Enough that most adults would miss it. She thanks the child and stands, already adjusting the load distribution in her head. A transport orderly brushes past her and mutters an apology. She stops him gently with 2 fingers on his sleeve. "Which elevators are down?" she asks. He blinks, surprised she knows any are. 3 and 4, he says. "Maintenance flagged them an hour ago." She releases his sleeve. Thank you. At the far end of the department, a door closes that should not close without a code. It is subtle. The click is wrong. She looks up at the same time a doctor does. The doctor frowns, then shrugs. Probably nothing. Probably. She walks to the medication room and checks the crash cart seals. Intact. She checks again anyway. Her hands are steady. Her breathing does not change. If someone were watching closely, they might notice she positions the cart slightly differently when she leaves, angled toward the main corridor instead of the wall. No one is watching closely. The intercom chimes with a routine announcement about visiting hours. It sounds normal. Too normal. Outside, the rain intensifies, drumming hard enough now to mask other sounds. She presses her palm briefly against the window glass, feeling vibration more than hearing it. Engines. Plural. She steps back into the corridor as security jogs past, radios now loud and sharp. A supervisor calls for everyone to stay in their assigned areas. The tone has shifted. Not panicked yet. Defensive. The nurse returns to her station and resumes charting. Her posture is loose, almost tired. Anyone looking would see exactly what they expect to see. A new nurse keeping her head down, hoping not to make mistakes. Inside, she finishes a checklist she never writes down. Routes, risks, people who will freeze, people who will follow instructions if those instructions are clear and calm. Whatever is coming is close now, and the hospital is not ready. She is. The first sound reaches the emergency department before anyone names it. A low, disciplined rumble that pushes through the rain and into the building's bones. The glass at the ambulance entrance vibrates, not shatters, vibrates with intent. Someone at the nurse's station looks up and says, "That's not EMS." By the time security reaches the doors, the headlights are already aligned in the driveway. 3 vehicles, matte paint, no markings meant for comfort. They stop in exact spacing, engines idling, rain steaming off the hoods. Doors open together, boots hit the pavement in sequence, not rushed, not hesitant. Inside, conversation thins out. The hospital does not recognize the shape of this moment, but it feels the weight of it. The new nurse stands still, chart open in front of her. She does not look at the windows. She listens. Security moves first, as protocol demands. 2 guards approach the doors, hands hovering near their radios, shoulders tight. One of them gestures, asking the men outside to wait. The men do not argue. They simply stand there, rain-soaking dark uniforms, eyes already scanning through the glass. An administrator arrives, breathless, tie crooked. He positions himself between security and the doors, practicing authority in a space that does not belong to him. He signals for the doors to open halfway. When they do, cold air and rain sweep into the corridor. The man in front steps forward just enough to be heard. He does not raise his voice. He does not introduce himself. "We're here for our ranger contact," he says. "We need access to the facility. Now." The word ranger lands badly. It does not belong in a hospital hallway at 2 in the morning. The administrator blinks, buying time. "Sir, this is a civilian medical center," he says. "If you don't have clearance—" "We do," the man replies, already holding out a sealed folder. "Your systems will catch up." Security hesitates. The administrator hesitates longer. The hallway behind them begins to fill with staff pretending not to watch. The nurse lowers her eyes back to the screen in front of her. Her pulse does not change. The phrasing was specific. Our ranger contact. Not liaison. Not officer. Contact. She closes the chart and walks away from the station, pushing a medication cart toward a patient room that does not need it. Movement without purpose attracts less attention than standing still. At the doors, the administrator is now arguing jurisdiction. He gestures too much. The armed men do not move. They wait. Waiting is their advantage. One of the guards glances back down the hall, uncertainty bleeding into his posture. His radio crackles with half-formed questions. No one higher up is answering yet. The nurse passes behind them, eyes forward, expression neutral. As she walks, she notes the weapons. Slung, not raised. Safety's on. This is not a raid. It is an extraction or a containment. Either way, time matters. A stretcher squeaks somewhere down the corridor. A patient coughs. Life continues, unaware it is about to be placed between forces that do not care about hospital policy. The administrator finally steps aside to consult his phone. The doors open wider. The lead officer steps inside, rain dripping onto the tile. Two others follow, maintaining distance without crowding. They stop short of the nurse's station. "We don't want to disrupt care," the officer says. "But we will. It is not a threat. It is a statement of priority." The charge nurse approaches, chin lifted. "You can't just come in here," she says. "We have patients." "We know," the officer replies, eyes scanning the room. "That's why we're controlled." His gaze passes over the new nurse without pause. She is aligning syringes on the cart, hands steady. She feels the moment he dismisses her. She lets it happen. Behind the scenes, the hospital begins to fracture into confusion. Administration calls legal. Legal calls risk management. Risk management calls back with questions instead of answers. Security requests guidance and receives silence. The officer checks his watch. "We're losing time," he says to no one in particular. A doctor raises his voice. "Who exactly are you looking for?" The officer answers without hesitation. "A ranger assigned as medical staff. You know who she is." The words ripple outward. Heads turn. Eyes scan badges. A few people laugh nervously, assuming misunderstanding. The charge nurse scoffs. "We don't have military assets working nights," she says. The new nurse pauses her cart beside a supply closet. She adjusts a glove that does not need adjusting. The officer's eyes narrow slightly, not in anger, in calculation. "Then your records are wrong," he says, "and someone here is at risk." That gets attention. Security steps closer now, tension tightening their shoulders. The administrator returns, face pale. "We can't verify anything," he says. "You'll have to wait." The officer nods once. He turns to his team and murmurs a sentence too low to hear. One of them shifts position, subtly blocking the main corridor. The nurse notices. Blocking movement without drawing notice. Containment. She changes direction, pushing the cart toward the pediatric wing instead. As she passes a respiratory therapist, she speaks quietly. "If they lock this place down," she says, "move your patients away from exterior walls." The therapist frowns. "Why?" "Just do it," the nurse replies, already moving on. At the station, an alarm chirps. A patient's oxygen saturation dips. A junior nurse panics, calling for help. The charge nurse hesitates, torn between the armed presence and clinical duty. The new nurse steps in without waiting. She adjusts the mask, checks the line, corrects a kink. The numbers climb back up. She does not look at the convoy. She does not look at the officer. The officer looks at her, not because of rank, because of outcome. He watches her hands, the efficiency, the lack of performance. When the crisis resolves, she steps back into the background without claiming space. The officer turns back to the administrator. "This facility is about to become a liability," he says calmly. "If you don't give us cooperation, we will take responsibility. That means movement. Armed movement." The word hangs heavy. Somewhere deeper in the hospital, a door alarms, locked down automatically by a system reacting to stress it does not understand. The sound echoes, sharp and wrong. The nurse exhales slowly through her nose. Automatic lockdowns trap people as often as they protect them. She steps closer to the station now, close enough to hear the officer's radio. Static. A call sign. A clipped update. They are running out of patience. The officer's gaze flicks back to her again. This time it lingers half a second longer. Something about the way she stands does not match the chaos around her. He does not know why yet, but he is starting to listen. The standoff does not announce itself. It settles in, quiet and tight, like pressure in the ears before a storm. Staff cluster where they feel safest. Security drifts closer together. The armed men hold their positions without visible tension, which makes everyone else more nervous. The new nurse moves. She does not walk toward the officers. She walks past them, pushing the cart with no urgency, no hesitation. She stops near the main corridor junction where 3 hallways converge: emergency, imaging, and pediatrics. It is the wrong place for a medication cart. No one questions it. Everyone is too busy watching the guns. A security supervisor raises his voice, demanding names and paperwork again. The officer listens without interrupting. When the supervisor finishes, the officer says, "We are not here to argue policy." Behind them, a patient monitor alarms again. The sound is sharp, cutting through the conversation. The charge nurse looks torn, glancing between the alarm and the armed men. The new nurse does not wait for permission. She reaches the patient first. As she works, she speaks quietly to the junior nurse beside her, giving short, precise instructions. Not explanations. Instructions. The junior nurse follows them without realizing why they feel easier to obey than the charge nurse's earlier orders. The alarm silences. The room exhales. Across the corridor, one of the soldiers shifts his weight, unconsciously mirroring the nurse's calm. He notices it only after it happens. The hospital's overhead lights flicker again, stronger this time. Somewhere, a generator tests itself without being asked. The sound is low, mechanical, unsettling. The officer turns to the administrator. "Your systems are degrading," he says. "That means your margin for error is gone." The administrator opens his mouth to respond. The nurse speaks first. "Your left corridor is about to bottleneck," she says, still facing the patient. Her voice is level, almost absent of emotion. "If you hold here, and the lockdown fully engages, you will trap staff between armed personnel and critical care rooms." The words land hard because they are correct. Every head turns toward her. The charge nurse stiffens. "She's new," she says quickly, as if explaining a problem. "She doesn't—" "She's right," the officer says. He does not raise his voice. He does not apologize. He simply steps aside, clearing the corridor by a meter. His men follow without question. The shift is small. It changes everything. The nurse finishes with the patient and finally looks up. Her eyes meet the officer's for the first time. There is no challenge in them, no fear either, just assessment. "Move your people back 2 doors, she says. "You'll keep sight lines without triggering panic." A pause. Half a second. The officer nods. They move. Security watches, stunned. No one gave them that authority. No one needed to. The administrator splutters. "You can't just take instructions from someone who understands flow," the officer replies. "Yes, I can." The nurse returns to her cart. She adjusts its position again, angling it to create a wider path for a gurney if needed. She does not announce it. She does not explain it. She simply does it. A new alert comes over security radio. Imaging is locked down by mistake. A patient is inside the scanner. The charge nurse panics. "That door seals automatically," she says. "We need maintenance." "It will take 7 minutes," the nurse says quietly. The patient doesn't have 7. She reaches under the cart and pulls out a key card. Not hers. A temporary override issued to senior staff. She swiped it earlier, unnoticed, when chaos made attention sloppy. She hands it to security. "Use this. Cycle the door manually. Do not force it." Security hesitates, then obeys. The officer watches her hands again. The confidence is not loud. It does not seek permission. It assumes responsibility. One of the soldiers leans toward the officer and murmurs, "She's not just staff." "I know," the officer replies. "I just don't know who she is yet." The nurse steps back into the corridor, scanning faces, counting breathing patterns. She notices a resident on the edge of freezing, eyes wide, fingers numb. She touches his elbow once, grounding him. He exhales and moves. Cost accumulates quietly. The charge nurse's resentment sharpens. The administrator's authority erodes in front of witnesses. Eyes begin to follow the nurse instead of the badge hierarchy. She feels it and hates it. Her radio chirps, internal hospital channel. A lockdown confirmation tone begins, then cuts off mid-signal. Someone higher up is pulling the plug. The officer turns to her. "If this escalates," he says, "people will get hurt." She nods once. "Then it can't escalate." He studies her face. "We were told our contact would avoid attention." "I am," she replies. The words are simple. They carry weight. She looks down the corridor where patients lie unaware of how close they are to becoming collateral. Her jaw tightens, just enough to hurt. "This hospital isn't your battlefield," she says, "and it isn't mine anymore." The officer hears the anymore. For the first time since arrival, he lowers his shoulders. The lines have been rewritten, not by rank, by necessity, and whatever comes next will demand a choice neither of them wants to make. The crisis tightens instead of breaking. It always does. When pressure finds resistance, it looks for weakness. The officer's radio crackles again, sharper this time. A voice on the other end speaks in clipped fragments, updates, concerns, a warning he does not repeat out loud. He listens without reacting, eyes fixed on a point just past the nurse's shoulder. When the transmission ends, he exhales slowly. "They want us to secure the floor," he says. Fully. Security hears the word secure and stiffens. The administrator hears it and pales. The charge nurse hears it and steps backward, instinctively protecting her staff. The nurse hears it and calculates. "Fully means weapons visible," she says. "Raised posture. That will trigger panic responses in half your people and freeze the other half." "And if we don't," the officer replies, "we risk losing what we came for." She nods once. "You already lost it." The statement is not defiant. It is factual. He studies her face, searching for the edge where bluff ends. He does not find one. "What are you suggesting?" he asks. She looks past him, down the corridor where a cardiac patient is being wheeled toward imaging, unaware that armed containment plans are being drawn around his heartbeat. "You stand down," she says. Publicly, the administrator chokes on the word. "Absolutely not." "You step back," she continues, not raising her voice. "And you let me create space. Quiet space. If this becomes a show of force, you will lose control of this building in under 3 minutes." The officer's jaw tightens. Standing down costs something. It always does. "And what does it cost you?" he asks. She meets his eyes. "Everything I've been avoiding." The words are enough. A sudden alarm sounds from the pediatric wing. Not medical, environmental. A pressure sensor tripped by a door opened too fast. A child begins to cry. The sound slices through the corridor, raw and human. The nurse turns toward it immediately. "That," she says, "is what escalation looks like." The officer makes his decision. He raises a hand, palm down. His team responds instantly, stepping back, lowering profiles, weapons still secured but no longer present in the line of sight. The shift is subtle but profound. The air loosens. Security does not know what to do with the silence that follows. The administrator sputters again, voice thin. "You can't just—" "I can," the officer says. "And I did." The nurse is already moving toward pediatrics. She does not look back to see if anyone follows. She assumes they will. Inside the wing, a nurse struggles with a frightened parent whose child is attached to too many wires to be moved easily. The door sensor flashes red. The lockdown system is confused, half-engaged, waiting for authority it cannot identify. The nurse steps in, kneels to the child's level, and speaks softly. Not reassurance, instruction. The crying slows, then stops, replaced by shallow breaths she can work with. She reaches the control panel and inputs an override sequence, not a hack, a legitimate code, memorized long ago and never forgotten. The system hesitates, then releases the door pressure. Behind her, the officer watches the way she stands when it's done. Not relieved, braced. Your contact profile matches, he says quietly. Medically embedded, ranger trained, separated under non-standard terms. The words are not an accusation, they are recognition. She closes her eyes for half a second. When she opens them, the weight is back where it belongs. I'm not your asset anymore, she says, and whoever you're here for isn't here. The officer absorbs that. He nods once. Then what are you protecting? She looks at the child, at the parent, at the corridor full of people who never agreed to be part of anything larger than survival. This, she says, the cost becomes immediate. The administrator steps forward, emboldened by the apparent de-escalation. I need names, he says. Reports. This will go to the board. The nurse turns to him. Then put my name on it. The charge nurse stares at her. You don't have to. I do, the nurse replies. Because if I don't, someone else will pay for decisions they didn't make. The officer understands that kind of math. By dawn, there will be consequences. Reviews, questions, a career quietly redirected or ended. She knows this as surely as she knows how to stop bleeding with one hand. She accepts it anyway. Outside, the rain begins to ease. Inside, the hospital stabilizes, monitors returning to their steady rhythms. The armed presence fades into the background, then into exits. The nurse remains where she is, shoulders squared, absorbing the cost while others feel relief. The hardest part is over. The quiet part is coming. Morning does not arrive all at once. It seeps in through high windows and thin curtains, softening edges without forgiving them. The hospital looks the same as it did 8 hours ago, but it feels older, as if it has absorbed something it will not speak about. The convoy leaves without ceremony. Engines start in sequence. Headlights cut once through the lingering mist, then turn away. No salutes, no statements, just controlled withdrawal, exactly as they arrived. From an upper corridor, the nurse watches through the glass. She does not wave. She does not nod. She simply waits until the last vehicle disappears beyond the parking structure before turning back inside. The emergency department exhales. Staff begin to talk again, cautiously at first, then louder as adrenaline drains. Phones come out. Messages are sent. Stories begin to form, already bending around uncertainty and ego. The administrator stands near the station, speaking in a low voice to someone on the phone. Words like review and protocol breach float through the air. The charge nurse avoids the new nurse's eyes, busying herself with handover notes. No one thanks her. She returns to room 12. The elderly man is awake now, blinking at the light. She checks his vitals, adjusts his blanket, and asks if he needs water. Her voice is exactly as it was at the start of the shift. Calm. Ordinary. Rough night? He asks. She considers the question, then nods once. A little. Down the hall, a doctor pauses as she passes. He opens his mouth, then closes it. Whatever he was going to say feels inadequate. He lets her go. In the break room, she sits alone and finishes a cup of coffee gone cold. Her hands tremble now, just slightly, not from fear, from release. She breathes through it, slow and controlled, until the tremor fades. A shadow falls across the doorway. The officer stands there without his team, without the posture. Just a man in a uniform that suddenly looks heavier. He does not enter unless invited. They accepted your version, he says quietly. Officially, this was a miscommunication resolved through hospital leadership. She nods. Good. He hesitates. Unofficially, they know who you are. She meets his eyes. Then they'll leave me alone. They will, he agrees, because you asked them to. He reaches into his pocket and sets something on the table without sliding it toward her. A simple card. No insignia. A number she already knows by memory. You won't be contacted, he says. But if things change, she does not touch the card. They won't, she says. He studies her for a moment longer, then straightens. For what it's worth, he says, you kept people alive tonight. She looks past him, toward the corridor where monitors beep steadily. That's the job. He leaves without another word. At shift change, the charge nurse assigns her to a different wing, a quieter one, less visibility. The reassignment is framed as routine, but the message is clear enough. She accepts it without comment. She finishes her paperwork meticulously, signs out, returns borrowed supplies, leaves no trace of the night beyond what the system already recorded. When she steps outside, the air is clean. The rain has washed the pavement bare. The hospital behind her hums with a life that does not include her story. She walks to her car alone. No one follows, no one calls her back, no one knows what almost happened. And that is how she wants it. She starts the engine and drives away as the sun clears the horizon, another nurse ending another shift, carrying a weight that will never appear on a chart. The hospital stands. The crisis passes. The quiet holds.